morning, everyone. Thank you for being here at Coffee with Genially, another edition with me. I have a special guest today, David Kelly from the Learning Guild. Thank you, David, for accepting this invite and for being at Coffee with Genially this edition.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. So the Learning Guild is an amazing community. They have amazing conferences like DevLearn, Learning Tech, and I believe that this is like conference that inspire people and people get to know like innovations in the fields and the industry. So I'm very excited about this interview. Let's start.
Thank you.
What actually speaking about the Learning Guild, what inspires you about your work at the Learning Guild and what do you hope to achieve through its initiatives?
Sure. I've been with the Guild team for about 10 years now, a little over 10 years. And I was a member of the industry community working in the field like all the other members of our community in the past. And what always resonated with me with the work that the Guild did was the forward-leaning narrative. It was always about what do we need to do next and how do we prepare ourselves for the future of this intersection between learning and technology. And when I had the opportunity to join the team and really immerse myself fully in that space, it was an opportunity I couldn't turn away, and haven't turned back on since. I love the work that the Guild does, and I've always been an advocate for it even before I joined the team. We are a professional development community that exists at the intersection of learning and technology, but we don't just look at the status quo. We don't look at what leveraging people to do what they need to do today as much as there's a practical nature to what we do to help people do their jobs today. We're always looking at what do we need to do tomorrow and how is technology changing the work that people in the L&D field do. And that inspires me every single day. That inspires me in the work that we do. We're always looking, whether it's an article on our website, a session at our conference, anything that we do through our content, it's always about bringing the community together and helping people learn from one another with a guide on how can we, in our small way, help push the industry forward, help the industry reach greater heights, help us all as a community do our work better. It's up on my wall. It shapes everything that we do. What we do is everything that we do is shaped through that lens of together we are better. How can we get our community together to work, to share, to push things forward? And that inspires me every day in the work that we do at the Guild.
This is amazing. This work is amazing because I actually believe that people in the instructional design community, learning development community, they like to help each other. They love to share new tips. And every year it's changing. Like it's changing so fast. Technology these days. So actually your conference and like DevLearn, Learning Tech are very dynamic. Like you have like bring your own device sessions. People can share their work as well. So it's actually amazing.
Yeah.
What are some emerging trends or innovations, speaking about innovations in the learning and development industry that you find particularly exciting or impactful?
Well, there's always the AI discussion. I don't think you can talk. I think in today's day and age, I don't know if I'm even allowed to say trend without saying AI in the same sentence. It's such a big thing right now, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about AI as part of our conversation. But AI is the big thing in the room right now that everyone's talking about. What I find interesting are the trends that are subsets of that. Like right now, everyone's talking about this low-hanging fruit of generative AI that's out there. But what I find more intriguing about the trends is what's going to happen when we get beyond just the generative AI stuff. How is that going to, when we get past the efficiencies of what AI can offer us, which is where a lot of the focus is right now. What's going to happen to our conversation when we start shifting towards, well, if people are using these in their work every day, how is that affecting their ability to learn? How is that affecting their ability to do their jobs? Because that's the work that we do. I mean, as much as AI can make the work that I do as a learning professional more efficient, is it enhancing the way that someone learns? Is it enhancing the way that someone is able to do their job? And we're going to get to that point. And I think that's going to be really exciting in the AI trend. Other emerging technologies that are out there, I think the AI piece of it is going to accelerate the data discussion that goes on in our industry in general. As long as I've been in this field, it's been a while. We've always struggled with the data that learning has to tell its story. We've talked about how many people went through our training classes, the scores that they got. which is different than metrics that can be attached to competency and and business value. And I think that both some of the stuff that's going on native to the L&D space, as well as the emergence of AI in the mainstream, is going to change that. And I think that the ability for us to have a better understanding of people's competencies and how we can support those competencies is an exciting part of where learning tech is going. And the last emerging trend that I think I would add that I'm personally excited about is the wearables that we have, both VR and AR that are there. I think that they can serve very unique needs. I think VR, while it may not necessarily be something that can solve every training problem it shouldn't be used at, but where it's used appropriately to solve a unique problem we couldn't solve any other way, it's very powerful, and I'm starting to see that emerge. And I think once we get to the point that AR is available in a headset like the glasses that I'm wearing now, not even, I mean, the Vision Pro is really exciting for spatial computing, but it's really distracting to anyone that sees you wearing that headset. When it gets more normalized and we can use AR and have our hands free to do things with that, I think it's going to be transformative to professional development.
Totally. And I actually believe that all these trends can complement each other, and even with the authoring tool or a tool that you're actually using at the moment in order to engage with your audience.
Absolutely.
Actually, in your opinion, speaking about AI, do you believe it is a companion, or accelerator, a substitute, or a threat?
So
there are so many opinions about this topic. So
everyone does, yeah, and it might seem like a bit of a cop out of an answer, but I think it's all of the above, depending on the context that you use it. I think if I had to only choose one, I would say a companion. I mean, I think it's something that augments human abilities. At the simplest nature, if I can take 20% of the stuff that I do on a daily basis and use AI to automate that frees up 20% of my time to be more effective in a human way. And that's a good thing. And I think that's where the companion piece becomes really, really important. I think it's an accelerator. There are literally tasks that I do today, even in the simple way that we're using AI, things that I just would love to be able to do that I don't do because it takes me too much time. I'm now adding back into the value that I can add to the work that I do, because there are tools that take a 3-hour job and make it a 10-minute job. And now I can find 10 minutes. I may not necessarily have been it may not have been a good use of my time to generate a piece of a deliverable that's going to take me 3 hours, but if it's taking me 10 minutes, now suddenly it fits my value proposition a lot more. In some cases, it might be a substitute. In some cases, there are going to be jobs that AI just does better, and we should embrace that. I think that's where that 20% example that I came from comes in. We should be finding ways that if I'm spending time in a spreadsheet, that's not the best use of my time, when AI might be able to just get me that answer out of a spreadsheet much quicker and do the analysis and things of that sort. And what I find most people have the conversation around is this conversation of, is AI a threat? And is it going to take our jobs away? And a lot of people will say AI is not a threat, that there will be some jobs that are eliminated, but they'll be replaced by new jobs. And at a mass scale, I think that that's true. But I will say that I, in the context of L&D professionals, that while I don't think that AI tools will replace learning and development professionals, I don't see that in the near term or in the near term. I think it's fair to say that as we go further into the future, that L&D professionals that can use AI tools will replace L&D professionals that do not use these tools. And I think that as we start thinking about employability and moving from one job to another, being able to use these tools in the context of L&D is going to be an emerging requirement. That you're going to be looking to go to an organization where using these tools is just ubiquitous, and we're using it in the context of L&D. And if you don't have that competency, you may not necessarily be qualified for that job. So I do think that that's one area of risk that I think L&D professionals need to be aware of. That I don't think your job is necessarily going to be eliminated, and I think L&D as a human is going to be in organizations. But the longer we get these tools, the more normalized they are. The more you're going to find these situations where there's a bullet point on a job description that says needs to be able to do this with AI tools. And if you don't develop that skill set, your employability could be impacted.
They need to be always up to date, but I believe that actually I do think that the big mistake or it's like they believe that AI is going to replace their jobs. Yeah, that's true. So one of the tech trends in recent years in advancement in tools that can create deeply engaging and interactive content and learning experience without the technical need to know how to code
Mm-hmm.
historically have been needed to bring such experience to life. It is actually a topic that can spark debate.
Mm-hmm.
What's your opinion or what's your take about this?
Yeah, a lot of people will say that these WYSIWYG tools, these what you see is what you get tools that you don't need to use code to create, have somehow diluted the output. Um, and depending on what you're looking at, there could be some truth to that. But what I will say is I don't blame the tool for that. I blame the users for that. I mean, there's a lot of people who would say that PowerPoint is a horrible tool because of all these awful PowerPoints that are out there. But that's the usage of the tool. PowerPoint can do amazing things if you leverage the power of the tool. So I think that there is that to me is the gap. It's not that the tool is the problem. It's how do we get people to go beyond the basics of the tool to use the tool's full effectiveness. And I think that the ability for us to create tools that are more accessible to people who don't know how to code is really, really important. That's how we get mass adoption of things. That's how we get things to be able to be pushed beyond a niche audience to a mass audience. What we struggle with sometimes is the balance between getting this tool that's easier to use into a mass audience without allowing it to drop the quality of the content that we're creating within there. And a lot of that comes down to the user. It comes down to how the tools are adopted by the suppliers that support these tools. But I am personally a believer of the democratization of the tools. Make them accessible, make them powerful, but the user interface as simple as possible, so that more people can use them.
Friendly editor and very intuitive. Yeah, this is something that we actually we are like very protective about these like features and the adoption of the user because we believe that in Genially that it has to be the content that you create has to be accessible and it has to be easy to create accessible content or interactive and animated content in the tool that you're using or the authoring tool that you're using.
Absolutely.
That's great. So how does the Learning Guild support its members in staying updated with the latest advancement in learning technology? Like, I know that we talked about these like two questions before, but where do you see the future of learning and development heading?
Well, I see the easiest way that we do it. I mean, the guild itself, to be honest, does not make a statement often. The guild does not tell people what the context of the learning technology space is. What we do is we bring the community together so that they can share with one another, and the community through its combined contributions can help push the industry forward. I mean, I might personally have a soapbox of what I believe in, and members of my team might have their own things, but we're not looking to push our agenda on top of that. We try to bring the community together so that collectively we can share, get to kind of consensus of what the direction of the industry is going, and then funnel energy in that direction. So we try. That's how we do what we do at the guild. But there are elements of where things are going that we see, such as the data trends, such as the AI trends that we see going on. And we recognize that. We recognize that there is energy going in this space, that there are forces of change in place, and we look to put resources in place to make sense of that. A good example of that is obviously the AI discussion that's going on right now.
Yeah.
We have areas in our content that are supporting that conversation. We have articles from experts that are written on our website. We have events that go on at our face-to-face events where we have symposiums and forums where people can get together and explore this emerging world of AI. So we create the forums that we see being needed based on where the direction of the conversations and the industry is going. I do think that with the advantage that we do have at the Guild is that we have people on our team who are passionate about this industry, who come from this industry. And we recognize, because we've got the experience and we've been in the field, the stuff that's happening that's a little bit ahead of the curve that is probably going to impact a mass audience. And we try to be ahead of that. We try to put the things in place so that people can not only adapt to what's happening, but be ready for what's happening. And I think that that's a unique lens that we add to our support of our community.
Yeah, and everything is happening so fast, and even to get the adoption of new tools and new trends, like it is very difficult. And I actually believe that there are a lot of people transitioning from teaching to instructional design, that they don't know how to start, they don't know like how to be like updated with all the new tools that actually are emerging. What advice would you give to professionals aspiring to make a significant impact in the learning and development field, or those that are transitioning to this field?
So people who are transitioning to this field, and the majority of people, I'll start with that, because the majority of people who are coming from transitioning into L&D right now are transitioning out of the academic space. That's usually this path that we have people who are coming from an academic environment and they want to get into the more professional corporate L&D space. And the biggest gap that I think that sometimes exists there is not the difference between education and training, which there is a difference there, and that is something that be focused on, but the difference between an academic environment and a corporate environment.
Yeah.
And you're in an academic environment, your goal is learning, and that is a core element of what you're doing in there. You're trying to transform someone through learning. But when you're in a business environment, when you're in a corporate environment, learning's not the goal. I mean, I know that that's not a very popular thing to hear, but learning is not the goal. Performance is the goal. You want people to be able to do their jobs better. You know, it's not a popular statement, but most organizations don't care about learning. The organizations that care about learning care about it in the context of, if people are learning and growing, then they're going to be able to do their jobs better and generate and produce more value in their work because they're learning. That's the connection. If they didn't see the connection between people are learning and adding more skills, and therefore it's going to add value to the work that they do, they wouldn't care about the learning. They care about the value that learning is generating. And I think understanding that for people coming into the transition, that's the end goal here. The end goal here is not learning for learning's sake. The end goal here is learning so that people can add more value to the work that they do for the organization, is a critical thing to understand as part of that transition. In terms of the technologies that are, or how to make an impact in the field, that to me is really it comes back to the core of what we do at the Guild, in my opinion. This is my personal opinion in terms of how do you make an impact. You make an impact in this field by giving back to this field. I mean, that is my path. That's how I got the job that I have today, which I consider to be a dream job that I've had for over a decade. Came to me because I was someone that wrote articles, and I participated in sessions on social media, and I gave sessions at conferences. I gave back to this field, and people, what I was sharing resonated with people. They felt that I had expertise, that my sharing gave them value. It gave me some visibility within the space that invited this opportunity to. So I always think, if you want to have an impact on this field, don't worry about, like, we throw phrases like, how do I be a thought leader and blah blah blah, and that never really resonates with me. I feel like if you give value, then you will get value, and it's really that simple. And that's the core element of that guiding principle of together we are better that we have at the Guild. Is if you give to the community gives back to you, and together we can grow as a community. And that's, to me, if you want to make an impact on the field, then give to the field, and the field will give back to you.
Yeah, and share their own opinions or tips without being afraid or being criticized by people. Yeah, interesting. So, what 3 topics would you recommend studying to someone who wants to get into learning and development?
So the first one, I would echo what I just meant. I mean, understanding the language of the business. You know, we understand what we do as learning professionals, but if you're going to be working in organizational learning, you need to understand the business of your business and speak to that, because that's what you're trying to impact. That said, I think in the context of L&D, having at least some basic understanding of how learning works, the pedagogy behind it, and all of that's helpful, because a lot of people who are coming into L&D, they're coming into the space accidentally. That's how I got into this field. I was in banking in the early portion of my career. I was good at my job, and people pointed at me and were like, "You're really good at that. Go show other people how to do that." And I didn't have the history, the pedagogy, or anything like that. So I had to backtrack and kind of learn that in my career. So whether you're doing it in advance of joining L&D in your early portion of your career, or if you're someone who came into it, having that understanding of at least some basic pedagogy, the more you can get into it and how learning works, the science of how learning works, and there's a lot of people in our field who explore that you can learn from, that's foundational. And the more you can do that, the better you can understand these things. And then the other thing I would add is just the field of design and understanding how user experiences work, and how to design something so that it's a positive experience that people engage in, that they can get high quality experiences with, that engage them and help them learn. What are the design elements necessary to do that? So the design elements, the pedagogy, and understanding what your business are, those are three very large buckets that you're not going to necessarily get within a single course. I mean, I've been in this field for decades, and I'm still learning about those things, because they're constantly changing, they're constantly evolving. So it's less about studying it to an endpoint to me, and more, there's probably a foundational stuff that does have an endpoint, but then just being a student and being curious about those spaces and continuously learning as you're in this space, so that you're able to deliver upon the needs of people in an effective manner.
Yeah, totally. And creating engaging courses and engaging experience while learning. Perfect.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, David. I have a question. What would you ask for, or what would you be the next question for our next guest? What would you ask him? Another instructional designer or learning and development professional.
One of the things, I mean, if I was going to ask, and one of the questions I always love to ask people when I'm speaking about the field is, what problem are you dealing with right now? I mean, because one of the things that I always find most fascinating is to find out how someone is approaching a problem. Because there's no single way to fix a problem. And sometimes just hearing other people's solutions and hearing how they're approaching a problem, and having the opportunity to talk through that with them, talk a little shop with someone about, what are you doing? Have you tried this? Oh, that's interesting. I haven't tried that myself. It's one of the greatest ways to learn from me. It's just having a conversation around a problem with somebody. So that's one of the things, if I'm talking to somebody, if I'm sitting at lunch with someone at a conference and having a conversation with a peer, what are you working on now? What are you struggling with? And not necessarily from a, can I work with you on this, but it's fascinating to hear someone talk about their work.
That's wonderful. So I'm going to make sure to ask this question to our next guest for the next Coffee with Genially edition. Thank you very much, David, for sharing all your experience and expertise with us today, and for being our guest in this Coffee with Genially edition.
Oh, thank you for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.